Hello everyone, my name is rmdeg and I have my website rmdeg. I'm going to tell you a little bit today about what I've been working on health-wise. Since most of my business, TLC Energy Center, is very holistic, and I have this extensive journey about a very balanced body. So my health and body journey are probably a little bit unique, but I am on the search for something that works for the most amount of people, and especially regarding weight loss, and especially for women who are getting older, but for women of all ages. So today I want to talk a little bit about keto and the ketogenic diet, which I have a book here that I want to mention because I have been doing this diet for probably around 8 months and not really experienced much change. But I did notice that Vanessa Spina talks about, that's my bird clock, so we'll just let that finish. 3 o'clock. Okay, good. So she talks about a glucometer and the ketone meter, so testing through blood, as well as making sure you know how your glucose levels are reacting, and therefore your insulin after you eat meals. So I've ordered that because I do think that I may be especially sensitive to how protein converts into sugars, and that's one of the things I'd like to rule out. I'm not entirely unhappy because I felt a lot more energetic and definitely staying at a certain weight, which is not terrible. But I have this goal of probably losing, I don't know, 30 to 40 pounds because I have been at that weight and that feels much better. So I can tell you a little bit about that. My history, and I'll show some before and after pictures on my blog, on my website, and I basically grew up with a very intermittent, subtle form of Cushing's disease, and I only really knew that it happened, I had it when I became pregnant and had my daughter, and the biggest indication was that I had the worst stretch marks, and I just could not verify or justify all those terrible stretch marks when my daughter was not very heavy and I was pretty young. I was 20 years old. So after that, I actually had a lot more trouble with weight loss in general. It was on and off, but when I was not pregnant, I used to exercise enough that I could always keep my weight under control, and I could always keep my energy under control with diet and exercise. So one thing I will say about Cushing's disease is it is a condition that has excess cortisol. So I really had very little pain. I could exercise a lot and pretty heavy, and without the inflammation that most people would need and have and recover from. So the recovery time was a lot less for me. So anyway, I discovered truly what this condition was from a somatic body worker in Vancouver, and she was trying to help me with some of the emotional issues that I was researching, but she also said, well, the physical symptoms you have, including the bump on my back, which is like the buffalo hump of Cushing's, and the hair, I was growing some more hair on my neck and chin that were pretty obvious at that time. All those things, she said, pointed to that condition, so I should research it. So when I came back to California and I started looking into it with my doctors, they were definitely noticing that cortisol was really high. So then they started the testing to check if it is an adrenal issue, where adrenals actually create cortisol, make the cortisol hormone, and or if it was a adrenal issue, pituitary issue. So the pituitary would send the message to the adrenals to create the amounts of cortisol you need. And this is a stress hormone, so you do need it, and you need it in terms of your regular life as well, which I discovered a lot later. By the time I had tested over years and years and years and been declined for the surgery at one point, I eventually was about to give up on that method, and I decided to just change my life in my own way. So I was really trying to find ways to reduce stress, find better ways of managing stress. And stress was always in my life, it's in everyone's life, but I was finding that somehow my body was responding with excess cortisol more than others. And I did have an MRI which showed a very small tumor, and it was quite small that it was ambiguous whether it was completely there or not. And over the years of rechecking the MRI, it never really got bigger or changed. So in that way, there was some declining the surgery because whether it was worth it or not, it kind of made sense. But I was quite disappointed when that came about in 2006 when I almost had the surgery. So at that point I quit teaching when I was a Montessori teacher, and I decided to go into health and wellness, and especially for myself, but eventually to bring more light to endocrine issues, hormone research, and all those things as for myself and for eventual clients. So in 2014, I actually did, once I changed health groups because of my husband's insurance, I decided, well, let's see another opinion, because I had been with one health group for a long time. And within that transition, I did find that I got the go-ahead to get the surgery done. So in 2014, I got the surgery done. And within the year after, I did lose 40 pounds. So I kind of know what that feels like. And for once in my life, I was eating kind of like everyone else, which is not necessarily a good thing, but I wasn't eating some very restrictive vegan, vegetarian, low carb, high carb, gluten-free, which I've done every single diet imaginable. I've done HCG shots, I've done all these things. And I have always lost some weight in those periods of extreme dieting, but I've also really messed up my metabolism. So as I'm getting into my 40s, I do not want to have a lifestyle that is excessive and extreme. And I want to find balance. So this is my goal. I already knew quite a bit about ketogenic eating way earlier. Even when my daughter was born, my oldest brother, who's 6 years older than me, he had a major brain hemorrhage, which he survived, and he was always working his way back to health. He had to have this medication called Dilantin for a while, and that is an anti-seizure medication, but it definitely is very destructive on your bones and your teeth. So it was his goal to get off of that medication naturally. And he discovered this diet which puts a lot of fat on the brain and supports the brain, and it was having a lot of success with seizure patients. So he worked his life to get off of it. He got off of the medication, and he was a very big advocate for the ketogenic diet. Now, I never really understood it back then. I was kind of eating paleo for many years because I had discovered that, and I wasn't really eating grains as much as I could help it. And then in that period between my surgery, which was in 2014, and 2016, I started to just eat anything, and I still always eat pretty healthy, but I was eating bread and I was eating pasta, and I was trying to stay gluten-free, so some things were rice flour instead, but I slowly gained weight again, and that weight crept on back to the same 40 pounds that I had lost. So even though I've never in my later years let myself get to a point where I'm really unhappy with myself, it's still always this plateau that I really want to break. So recently there has been another epiphany that kind of came about through a client of mine, and he said his wife was doing very well with bioidentical hormones. So I actually knew quite a bit about that as well, and I had tried to begin that testing in 2001, but because I was pregnant with my son at the time and everything was a little bit on hold, and also the doctors that I were looking into, they were doing more like anti-aging protocols, which was not really what I was after, and some of it was prescribing full-on medical levothyroxine, etc. And I was definitely not looking for that. So I kind of gave up on that, and knowing that I had Cushing's, possibly Cushing's disease, all those years, I also just went with regular medical endocrinologists and did the testing for that. So the recent research into bioidentical hormones is also very promising, and I also feel like it will help a lot of people, since now I'm a little less of an anomaly. I am post-Cushing's disease, so I am more like every other woman who's in their 40s and had 2 kids and just has this stubborn so many pounds to lose. But what I'm learning is not only adrenals are something that I keep an eye on with the cortisol levels, but thyroid has always been something to keep an eye on. And generally my thyroid levels were always pretty good, and I always had fairly high testosterone, all these things, which in some way I feel like was a result of excessive cortisol and the pituitary function trying to make all other glands appear somewhat normal in its excessive output. So now that that is normal, my pituitary gland and the ATCH and cortisol, all those things are normal, what's happening now is that testosterone's a bit low, DHEA was low, and T3 from the thyroid is low. So I am now supplementing these things with the doctor in San Jose that I've met and have been working with. And I'm taking a lot of other supplements, like just a good multivitamin, more magnesium, and liver support, probiotics. I take prebiotics because I have some of these fibers from Dr. Gundry's research. But basically, I'm feeling much stronger and much more supported in my whole system. And again, like I haven't noticed extreme differences yet, but some of these things do take time. And I did up the omega-3 supplements from 2 a day to 4 capsules a day, and I may actually increase that to almost 6 capsules a day, partly because the difference between the cholesterol from my October test to the January tests, the cholesterol has gotten better, and that's when I increased the omega-3s. So because the ketogenic diet has a lot of higher fats, and some of those could be omega-6 fats, which cause a little more inflammation, it is always good to combat that with a lot of omega-3s, which reduce inflammation. And they're just heart and health, their support in general on your endocrine system and your circulatory system. So those are all some of the things I'm working on, and I would like to keep a little bit updates going on. I do have my story of Cushing's in this book, The Women Who Rock. It's Natasha Deswalt's book, and it's a compilation of many women's stories. It's a short story. Mine is called The Gift of Cushing's, and partly I believe that Cushing's disease was a big gift for my life because it got me into all the health research that I've ever done, and really seriously. I was always a little bit into health because I had a lot of issues when I was younger. Part of it is the ear, nose, and throat. When I was very young, I had severe allergies to milk and eggs, the big allergens, probably wheat, but I wasn't aware of that yet when I was really young. And I had issues with any kind of milk. So I was having soy, and in the form of Pro-Sobi, because I had so much problems with mother's milk, cow's milk, formulas, and we didn't quite have any goat's milk yet at the time. So by the time I was 5 years old, I had so much congestion that I was always stuffed up. I couldn't hear very well. I always had a runny nose, and I just couldn't breathe very well. But the earlier years, I remember severe earaches when I was 3 years old, and my mother tells me when I was even younger than that I had pressure differential problems. So when she would lay me down, then the pressure in my ears would not adjust, and I was just screaming. So she slept upright with me for many nights, and all of these things just really formed this beginning of the value of your senses and my own hearing, my own voice, my own breathing, and all this stuff that was so important that I've incorporated into my new business, which is TLC Energy Center. And the T is really about the throat chakra and truth, living your truth, speaking your truth, everything that can come from a childhood suppression of all these things where I was pretty overprotected, and I was always like quieted down, even though I'm actually a pretty rebellious and a kind of active and energetic person with a lot of ideas, and sometimes they're wacky, but basically I am a Libra. I do look for the medium of many sides of any kind of argument, and I have learned over the years. I have an Aries moon sign, Gemini rising, and Venus in Virgo. So all of these things are part of the picture, but the Gemini and the speaking, basically to communicate to the world. I really do want to get this out there. I want people to be able to be their own advocates. I would like to have more testing done in regular medical. I have not done my MRI this year yet because I'm waiting till the end of the year, till my deductible from insurance is lower, and just some of these little things which I think are kind of a problem. Like, I just think more people should be tested for T3 and not assuming that T4 is going to convert to T3, where your cells will actually use the thyroid hormone. Some of these things are going to be a bit of a fight to get this as covered medical, instead of I have to go out and do my own blood work, my own labs with the urinalysis for special doctors, and it's just an expensive journey. So, and that's even if you're pointed on the right track. Some people are even pointed against that, like they're directed somewhere else just because they're thinking, what kind of credibility do these doctors have? Well, they're doctors, they're medical doctors, and they've chosen to go into specialty fields because of what they have already experienced with lack of finite and subtle testing, which can solve a lot. So you can always get this book on my website. I'm also going to put it up on Amazon. And I have a little feng shui booklet as well. So it comes with the pencil and this little closure band. This is my logo, the TLC Energy Center, and this is a feng shui do-it-yourself guide. So I use the CD cover in format to just create a little kit. And inside there is this booklet, tells you the basics of feng shui. And then this little card tells you how to use the Bagua map that I have here enclosed. This is the color Bagua map. And this is the vellum clear Bagua map, which you can put overlay onto a sketch of your floor plan or your house, the entire floor plan of a floor or a room. And all of these things just help you see which quadrants represent certain areas. And I learned about feng shui in the massage training, actually, when I had to do a specialized course. I had to do a presentation based on something I was interested in. And I have heard about feng shui before, but it's also about energy of your space and your surroundings. Feng shui is actually wind and water, and it's how energy can flow through a space just like wind and water meanders through things. So I've always found it pretty fascinating, and it's a very involved modality, but this is a very easy way to just see the basics in your own home. And it's also on my website, which is rmdeg.com. So ROBINMDEGROOT.com. And I definitely advocate all these keto books I've been getting them in Costco. There's a lot of references in there about websites to join and just support groups, because I think this is going to be a very important change in the recommended diet for a lot of America, if not other parts of the world. And partly because the sugar overgrowth and that whole aspect of society being controlled on some level by sugar is really taking its toll. And this, with the low carb goals, really changes that. So whether I lose weight or not, I already feel quite good about eating this way. I don't feel deprived. I can make desserts when I want to, if I need them. And mostly it focuses on whole foods and just foods that satiate, that really fill you up and make you feel good and have energy. So I've always loved olive oil since I discovered it, and avocado and butter, and basically getting my way into coconut oil things, but I do have a bit of issues with coconut. It's also something that's quite powerful, so you have to work your way up to it pretty slowly. So anyway, I'll keep everyone posted who's interested, and you can always let me know any questions you have about the surgery. Some people who are going into that, who may have been prepped for their surgery but don't know how they'll feel. That was definitely an experience which kind of warrants its own episode, and I will talk about it. Also, I just want to mention that there are different kinds of issues people have gone through in their life with their bodies and this diet, how it affects them. So that's partly why I want to make this a little bit more vocal, because I have done a lot of things to my body, so I have to keep always a little bit of a realistic expectation what will come about now. I had a major tummy tuck surgery in 2009 and with liposuction, so although it helped at the time, after the body is very different after that. So when you have removed fat cells from your body, then you will not necessarily gain fat in that area anymore, but you will gain it somewhere else if your body has to gain it. And fat cells are a protection, so people should remember that when there is too much glucose in the blood, then fat cells are receiving that. So if you artificially remove fat cells when there is no addressing of the original issue, that can be a big problem too. So I've always tried to be aware of those things, and I just want to be very upfront and authentic and kind of transparent about where I'm coming from. And I will put some pictures up. Some of them are a little too graphic. Those would be the before surgery pictures, but like with clothes on, it's all right, but without, it's just, I don't know if that can be online. But anyway, the children I've had are my greatest treasure, and I wouldn't change anything for the world for that. So in one way, having my daughter made me aware of the condition, and I'll always be grateful for that. So although I may have some scars, and who doesn't, I just think all these things are teaching us about the journey, and for me, a lot about my purpose. That's why the gift of Cushing's was my story, because it really started me on this path of your problems, your diseases, whatever they may be, really open your eyes to what to focus on, and what is really going on, what your body is trying to tell you, and your spirit, your emotions, all those things. So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and take a look at my website, and you can get any of those products if you are interested. And drop me an email, or you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and I also have an Instagram. I even have a Yelp page, but some of those things are for local coaching that I do. And I do bioenergy healing, as well as group coaching, which is online and video webinar format. So that's what I really want to start to get into, to have small groups that can go deeply into their speaking of their truth, see where their relationships need some help or how they're already helping them, and just foster that, as well as getting to their creative, inspired purpose in life. So those are the main things that my courses will work on. And I'll also host a mastermind where people can meet in person, even if you are in the online groups or not. But the mastermind will meet 4 times a year, maybe more. And we will work on bioenergy healing. We'll also work on those other topics. So I look forward to seeing everyone on this channel, and until next time.